So I'm still in North Devon and I'm just by the campsite. I've decided to add another couple of days to my stay, try and fit a little bit more in, and I'm just at the path beside this campsite, and there's a little waterfall just further on upstream here that I'm going to photograph, so I thought I'd bring you along. So let's turn this camera around, let's get there. Okay, so here's the waterfall. It's not a very big one, but it is interesting. It's got some nice rocks to the side of it. I'm going to line it up, so I'm going to probably shoot from here. The water is lovely and clear. I'm going to do a longish exposure on it. I'm going to try a few. There's where the bubbles at the front here, sometimes they form a pattern. I don't know if they're forming it today, but a long exposure of, say, 10 to 20 seconds, you can see a nice pattern forming in the water. But if that doesn't happen, we'll do a much shorter exposure on the waterfall itself, so it doesn't become too milky and white. But I think this is a really nice balanced scene with the rocks either side of it. I really like this spot. I've photographed it before. So let's get the camera set up. Okay, so I'm not going to use an ND filter here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the ISO down to 50, and I'm going to put the aperture up quite high to start off with, and we'll see how well we'll do. So even with a f18 here, we're talking a 30-second exposure. So we'll drop down the aperture to f11, I think. And that gives us, I like to slightly underexpose because this water here will blow out quite easily. So let's start off with the 10-second exposure. Let's see what we've got here so far. So I'm zoomed out quite a bit. I'm going to zoom right in. I'm going to have to move this a little bit. Unfortunately, I've got this gimbal in my hand, and I need two hands to line up this shot. So I'm just going to quickly line up this shot. Okay, so now I've got this lined up. I'm just going to focus in on this front waterfall here. I've got back button focusing on. I'm going to underexpose by stop here, just here. So we've got 8 seconds as a time, so it's on a 2-second timer, and that's my first shot. There's some leaves creeping in onto the right here, distracting, so that's probably going to be cropped out. I might have to crop this a little bit. I can't zoom in on any further with this particular lens. It's fully at 40. So what I can do, I've got my 70 to 300 in my bag. I might move back a little bit further and use that as well. But what I didn't do was use a polarizer to cut out that glare. There we go. That's the polarizer now. So let's take another shot. Now, it doesn't look like there's much going on the way of the bubbles. So I'm not going to focus on that. What I'm going to do is change the ISO and go for a faster shutter speed, and I can bring this now down to f8. Sorry, it's difficult juggling the camera and this gimbal at the same time. I should have brought a magic arm, but this will have to do. So let's back and focus that again. One stop under. So that's a second. For me, I think a second is a good time for a waterfall. You don't want it to become too milky. I'll also do a half a second as well. Okay, so in order to get a half a second, I will bump the ISO up to 400, and that should give me a 0.5 in exposure. There we go. So there's a 0.5. And I will also bump it up to 800, so we get a 0.25. No, in this case it's a 4, of course, quarter of a second. So 2 seconds, there we go. Right, now what I'm going to do is turn it into portrait mode and shoot it again and try and get more of this foreground. I want to shoot this waterfall in 4 different ways basically. 2 ways on this lens, which is in portrait and landscape. I've already done the landscape, so I'll switch to portrait, and when I change over to the 70 to 300, I'll do the same again. I'll do 1 in landscape and 1 in portrait. So let's get that done. Okay, so I've got this still at 40 millimeters. Quick back and focus. It's still on a quarter of a second. Now, because I've tilted the camera, I've got to change the filter. So there we go. Look at this water. You can see right through to the rocks here. When that smooths out a further, a longer exposure, all this water will filter out here, and you'll get a nice clear view of the rocks beneath. So let's do that. In fact, that's pretty clear there, but I'm going to just jump straight into going into a longer exposure. So we're dropping the ISO. I'll do it, yeah, I'll do it as I did it before. I'll do it to the 400. Brighten that up a little bit. Do it to the 400 at half a second. And I'll do it at 200 at a second. And I will also do it on 50 at 4 seconds. So you'll probably notice a pattern there where the time relates to the ISO. It's sort of directly linked. So those are my 8 shots, I think. I've lost count. 8 shots of this using the 40mm. I think if I go any wider, we're going to get too much stuff at the side. They will be cropped, and I will put up a couple of images here. I don't know, we'll see how many we've got, but I'll put them up now while I change over lenses. Okay, so now I'm at 70mm. zoom in there. Let's focus, I mean. There we go. It's I've got to do the tilter here. There we go. Sorry about this camera moving around. Reaching a little bit. There we go. So it's 5 seconds here on 50 ISO. There we go. We've got blown out here, so I'm going to go a little bit darker here. I'll go full 2 stops down, and we are at, I can't see how many seconds that is. I haven't got my glasses on. I think it's about 3 seconds. Okay, that's better. Don't know how, if we've lost any of the shadows here. Might have to maybe blend some images together, I'm not sure. So it's a little bit harder to operate this camera when it's sideways for me. So we'll go up to 200, and we'll go down 1 stop. Well, we'll go down 2 stops, so that's a second. Okay, that's good, nothing's blown out there. And we'll go up to 400, so that should be half a second. There we go, 0.5. Excellent. And then I'll do a last one at 800. Well, we'll do 800 at 4 seconds. Hopefully the highlights won't blow. Pepper's just about to walk in front of the camera now. Was that 4 seconds? Oh, it seemed quick. Oh no, it's a quarter of a second. What am I talking about? Okay, so let's turn this into landscape mode. So I really like this composition. I think this is probably going to be the composition that is going to be my favourite. We've got this water moving around. I've got to bring the polarising filter down. In fact, I'll take a shot now, and I'm going to go for a really long exposure here. So I'm going to go right back down to there, to 50 ISO, and we'll bring it up to, this is 2 seconds. So I'm going to change the aperture up to 11, and there, we'll go with that's 6 seconds, I think. Okay, those highlights are fine. So what I'm going to do is actually allow some of that glisten, not much. If I go too far like that, you see well, let's actually do it so it's as if there's no polarization at all. We'll see how it goes. It's actually a little bit brighter scene, so I'll do it about there. I'm always underexposing because the meter's picking up the white, isn't picking up the white of the waterfall. So we've got a nice little blur here now. So I think what I'll do is, with photography, you've kind of got to react to the scene and the light and how it works. So you're seeing me actually work here now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the aperture up much higher. I'm going to go to 22. So we get a really long exposure. And there we go. I'm going to go for 25 seconds, I think. Hopefully this won't blow out. And I've left off the polarization. So that's a really long exposure. The water's very milky, very slightly blown out there. I'm not too concerned with that, to be honest with you. I don't think much detail is lost when you're doing such a long exposure, because it's just going to be a wall of white anyway. And then at least I know I've caught the shadow details. I do like that composition. So those are my shots. Okay, well that's it for today. I'll bring up my shots at the end. Let me know which one is your favourite. What do you like? Do you like it being the really long exposure or the shorter exposure? Let me know in the comments. But if you like this video, please press the like button. It really does help, really important for my channel to grow. Really appreciate it if you would hit that like button. And if you haven't already subscribed and you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing. But until next time, take care.